Now let's shift from West Asia to South Asia, Sri Lanka to be specific. Sri Lanka has a new president now, and he has the capability to transform the country, to change the country for good. His name is Anura Kumara Dissanayake. People call him AKD, and for the sake, we're also going to call him AKD. He's a political leader with many labels. People call him Marxist, left-wing, and most importantly, anti-India. But tonight on the show, we are going to go beyond these labels, and we are going to see what is AKD as a person, what he really means for Sri Lanka, and how he sees India and other foreign powers. Let's start with the election results. AKD won 42% of the votes in the first round of Sri Lanka's presidential elections. That's impressive, but it wasn't enough to win outright. His closest competitor, Sajid Premadasa, received 32% of the votes, and Ranil Wickremesinghe, the previous president, got 17%. Since no candidate crossed 50% mark, Sri Lanka had the second round of voting. And now this is historic because this is for the first time in the history of Sri Lanka's elections that there has been a second round of voting. And here is how it worked. Voters could list their first, second and third choices on their ballot. While many don't typically use this option, this time those second choice voters became game changer, and that's how AKD won. So who is AKD? Unlike many other Sri Lankan politicians, he does not come from any political dynasty. He grew up in rural Sri Lanka and was introduced to the idea of Marxism during his college days. In early 1990s, he joined JVP, a leftist party that has been split from the country's Communist Party. And now there is something important to know about JVP. In the past, it wasn't always a peaceful party. The party tried to overthrow the Sri Lankan government twice, in 1971 and again in 1987. Both times, the upswings were violent and resulted in tens of thousands of deaths. However, AKD wasn't involved in that part of JVP's history. When he joined, the party was transitioning from violence to democracy. He became a member of parliament in 2000 and eventually became the leader of JVP in 2014. Although the JVP was often seen as a fringe party, the 2022 economic crisis in Sri Lanka boosted AKD's popularity. People were fed up with corruption, political dynasties and mismanagement, and AKD used that to his advantage. He pitched himself as a political outsider, not talking about Marxist ideas, but focusing on things that regular Sri Lankans cared about: corruption, taxes, and fairness. Now that he is the president of Sri Lanka, what can we expect from AKD's policies? Well, he's a modern day Marxist, which means that while he holds to the traditional left-wing agendas, he is also going to make sure that investments are coming into the country, that foreign companies are investing in the country, because at the end of the day, he needs to stabilize the economy of the country. And even during his victory speech, he acknowledged that Sri Lanka is in deep economic crisis and there is no quick fix. He said that he's not a magician, but will do everything in his power to bring things back to normal. One of the biggest questions of his presidency revolves around IMF, International Monetary Fund. In 2023, Sri Lanka agreed to a $2.9 billion IMF bailout to help fix the country's economy. This bailout came with some tough conditions: higher taxes and low subsidies. AKD has promised to renegotiate the deal, which could delay the much needed funds. This has worried some experts who fear that country's economic progress could be derailed. Aside from the economy, there is another key concern: how AKD is going to deal with the foreign powers, the foreign countries, especially India and China. Now let's focus on what this means for India. AKD is seen close to Chinese ideology, and historically JVP has been anti-India. They were opposed to India's peacemaking missions in Sri Lanka and have been critical of Indian troops and businesses in the country. However, AKD himself hasn't publicly shown this hostility. In fact, after his victory, the first foreign diplomat AKD met was India's High Commissioner. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also congratulated him and emphasized the importance of India-Sri Lanka relations. AKD responded by saying he wanted to strengthen ties with India, which is a positive sign. However, there are still concerns. China has already congratulated him, and many are watching to see if AKD will favor China over India. One key question is how AKD will handle the presence of Chinese spy ships in Sri Lankan waters. Will he see this as an aggressive move, or will his leftist sympathies make him more lenient towards China? As of now, Sri Lanka's new president has too much on his plate. His first priority is going to be forming a stable government, considering the fact that he has only 3 members of parliament, including himself. So what you can expect in Sri Lanka are back-to-back elections. As for his policies, they are still a bit of mystery. Will AKD stick to his promises of fighting corruption and boosting the economy, or will his left-wing ideology shape Sri Lanka's future in unexpected ways? As they say, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, India and China will be watching closely. So this is where things stand in Sri Lanka. A new president, a new political landscape, and potentially new challenges in the region. But for Sri Lanka, the road ahead is both difficult and challenging, but with proper leadership and future-sightedness, the country can bounce back and come back to its old days of glory.